Thank you for tuning in to Andronetalks Radio, gathering as one in our sovereign truth from a galactic perspective, exploring our world with new ideas, knowledge, and a promise of a better future. Galactic discussions for galactic-minded people. Andronetalks.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today in Andronetalks Radio. We're going to be talking about Notre Dame de Paris today regarding the yellow vests and many of the other issues that are happening in France. So I have Chris here with me, and we're going to continue on. This has been an ongoing discussion for the past couple of weeks and maybe a couple of months. I don't even know what level, what stage they're in as far as the protests of the yellow vests in France, but everything took an interesting turn yesterday with the fire of the Notre Dame Cathedral, and that was kind of a shock to everyone. I mean, the yellow vests have been really powerful, but this made international news. It seemed to bring all sorts of people together, regarding those with Christian backgrounds, but also then bringing in the topic of who did it. And there's a lot of speculation, a lot of ideas. We're going to cover so many different perspectives and ideas, and not so much, there's probably a few different variations of what we think had happened, as the dust and the ashes are settling in the ground today, and talking about the importance of the cathedral and how it impacts the whole Yellow Vest movement, how it impacts France entirely, how it impacts the EU, and how it impacts the rest of the world and the dynamic between Christian and Muslim faith. And so without further ado, I'm going to go to Chris and say hello.
Hi, Jess. How you doing today?
Doing well, but kind of intrigued by, what's going on here.
When you called me yesterday, I was having a little nap. I'm not going to lie. So when you called me and asked me if I've seen what happened in France, I didn't know you were talking about. So when you told me, the Cathedral Notre Dame de Paris is burning, my first thought, and I guess maybe not all my neurons were on at that moment, I guess, and we're still asleep. I thought, how can it burn? It's made of stone. But took a little while to wake up. After a coffee, I started looking into it, and then I realized what was really going on. And automatically I had that very strange feeling, I guess, higher self message pretty much telling me there is something off here. There is definitely something else behind this. There is way more to that story. And it's a good thing we didn't do the report last night like we were planned to. And that 24 hours gave me the time, like you said, to have the ashes and the dust settling, and suddenly all kind of information started to pop up on YouTube and in the news. And it was very, very, very informative to see what's really going on. Well, there is a lot to talk about.
It's close to about a year ago. Last year around this time, I went to France, to Paris, and I didn't go inside of the cathedral. I walked past it, and I just gazed up, and immediately I really didn't want to go inside. I didn't like, there were these spirits floating around the spire, and they were very strange to me. They weren't something that was legitimately positive, and I felt like it was protecting the building. but I felt like they were not here for the highest good of the people. And I asked that they would be removed, to be honest with you. And I know that there's been a lot of things that have happened in our world under the name of Christianity or faith or religion, and a lot of injustice has happened to people, like the Inquisition, and the church has used a lot of different methods and scare tactics to get people to continue to follow and therefore continue to feed the machine, which is the sweat and the brow and the hard work and labor of the common people are the ones that have pretty much paid for all of these type of cathedrals and paid to support the Roman Catholic Church and many other religions. I'm not going to just point out that one religion, but it's very symbolic in a lot of different ways. Amazing architecture, and also what we would refer to as mud flood architecture, where they just don't build things like this anymore. Absolutely breathtaking, and the structure itself and the technique, what do they call the flying buttresses, and all of the style that supports such a grand building, and not to mention the amazing detail of the stained glass work, and also all the beautiful carvings and statues and so forth. So you have a breathtaking building that they just don't know how to rebuild anymore. I mean, they could, but it's very, very difficult and astronomical in price. And the people generally have paid for these type of structures. And there's also a heavy, heavy level of duality that has existed in this building. You have the Gothic, the French Gothic architecture that was, not just the saints and so forth, but you have a mix of all sorts of different things. And we're going to talk about that because there were some gargoyles on there at one time that clearly reflected the Zoroastrian duality, the good and the bad. And just to start this off, there is an interesting sculpture in there of Michael with the devil weighing the souls, which I thought, well, it looks like he's partnered there with him, and they're making a decision over humanity, which I don't know if either one of them have a right to do that. But that's another discussion, I guess. But let's get into there's this theories of the reason for this. This is a significant day. This was the 15th, which is on the Gregorian calendar. You pointed that out to me, Chris, that this is what's leap year.
Yep,
and,
absolutely.
All right.
So first, Mike, and I want to go into what you just mentioned here, but I want to add something before we start, because my question was directly how can it be connected to the yellow vest, right? And I realized it's strangely connected to the yellow vest, and I will go into that in a minute. But the first thing for people to understand, for those who don't understand really what Notre Dame means for the French people, it's considered as the heart of France. It's in the very middle of Paris, on the Isle Saint Louis, which was a king of France. We call also Saint Louis, that went to Jerusalem with the Crusades at the time. And they built the cathedral, but that cathedral is 850 years old. It has been going through history, through different wars, through the revolution, even the Second World War. The Nazis didn't dare to touch that cathedral. And suddenly, in supposed time of peace, that cathedral just, pretty much half of it went to ashes. And when I say half of it, is because there are two cathedrals. Those who built that in the 11th century were called the builder companions. They are part of the Freemasons, and they were able to build the stone, the stone aspect of it, which, as you said, has many details, absolutely incredible. And then you have the second part of the cathedral, which is called the forest. The forest is the whole architectural wood architecture that will be the support for the roof. And we call it the forest because they were using these huge timbers of trees, this timber of wood, that would be pretty much trees that would be hundreds and hundreds of years old to be able to be that big. Each of these timbers weighs tons, and they are pretty much the equivalent of 52 acres of forest that is in that, structure on the top of the roof. Now, 850 years, nothing ever happened. And suddenly, out of nowhere, that whole thing goes to dust. What is very interesting here, too, is to understand that 4 days ago, they have removed 16 copper statues of pretty much 7 feet high from the top of the roof 4 days ago. 12 representing the apostles and 4 representing the evangelists. Right? Strange coincidence. Anyway, yesterday was the 15th of April. And why was it important that, it was not just a regular day that it burned. Yesterday was also the day where Emmanuel Macron, I would say in January, after the violent protest of end of December, he got very scared, and his agenda is obviously to be elected or to be in power in the European community. So the only way for him to gain time, knowing that May would be the election for the European community, was he needed to delay the process and kind of gain time. So his answer was that he's going to do a great debate. Meaning he's going to go to every city in France and listen to the people, supposedly, right? And in 3 months, he will give his final result that will be the answer, the proper answer to the anger of the Yellow Vest, of the people of France. Well, the thing is, most of the Yellow Vest, 99% of them, knew that was just smoke. Because what he did really, he never went to talk to the Yellow Vest. He literally went to every cities and asked mayors of every surrounding villages and surrounding cities, or where he was going, to come and sit down and listen to him for 6 hours. Now, all these mayors were not just random mayors. They were all clearly and very methodically selected, meaning people that were supporting his agenda. All those who didn't support his agenda or might have been troublemaker were not invited. That's one. 2, each of them received a list of questions they could ask. That means we couldn't talk about putting a tax on the rich people. We couldn't talk about more money for the poorest class. We couldn't talk about different subjects like that, which was a very core what the Yellow Vests were talking about. So what he did every day was talking 6 to 7 hours, transmitted and broadcasted through every national televisions. It's pretty much like Chavez was doing in Venezuela or in Cuba with Castro, same thing. And it was pretty much starting his campaign for the European Community campaign, the EU. And which, by the way, it's against the law. They're not supposed to start that, a month before the elections. So they're supposed to start now in April.
This is the French law.
This is the French law.
French law. So he's obviously overriding the French law to.
He's overriding the French law to start his campaign on the dime of course, the French citizen, because of course someone needs to pay for that. And he pretty much, I don't know how many cities he visited, but pretty much every city in France. So yesterday at 9 p.m. was the time where he was supposed to bring the result of all these, 3 months of great debate and bring the final solution that would supposedly fix the problem. So what's happening here is that suddenly, out of nowhere, 2 hours before, that cathedral is burning. So, of course, he decided to not talk about this program anymore. And, of course, now it's national It's a national event, and everybody's talking about that only. So it's one of those, look here, don't look over there again.
Right.
So I'm not saying
Very,
false flag. It's very convenient.
Yeah, it's very suspect. Patty Broussard sent me a picture of the cathedral, and it looked like there was a DEW weapon used, a directed energy weapon. Now, I'm not an expert in looking at images and seeing, but to me it looks pretty convincing. I don't believe that the Muslims did it. I don't believe that the yellow vests did it. I don't even believe that the black blocs did it. I think, like you said, if it was conveniently set up that the statues were taken out, they were already working on, renovations. And interesting enough, the very important artifacts that were in the building seem to have been recovered. Is that correct? That would be
yes.
the crown of thorns, or supposed crown of thorns. We don't know if they're actually legitimate, and they're supposed to be a remnant of the cross that Christ was. So, it looks like, I'm suspicious. I know many people are suspicious. Like I said, that whole situation where you're ready to do a speech and then something else happens. Am I saying the French government did that? I don't know. I mean, for all we know, there was ETs involved, and they had something else in mind. We don't really know who has the technology to do that. The high-level corporations like Monarch, Mobius, and some other ETs that may feel like they're going to lose something if Macron talks about whatever he's going to talk about. They all know the outcome of what's going to happen regarding how people are going to respond. And so there are many parallels of how these things kind of roll out. And I do believe that there was some kind of weird situation, because clearly there's been so many years, like you mentioned, that something like this could burn down, and it was not a fragile building in the first place. Things can happen. I'm not saying that can't happen, but I did see something like a tweet that President Trump mentioned. He said something like, well, why don't they kind of get one of those planes that you can just dump a bunch of water on it and stop it, and nothing really dramatic was done to avert it either. And so of course they just have like the fire engines there and everything, but
even there something is up.
Right, but when the directed energy weapons happened and were used in California, it was the same thing. It was like, this is like totally out of control. It seemed like a lack of major effort to try to put it out. They kept showing up randomly. I mean, I wouldn't wish that on anyone, and but it does seem a little suspect to me. I'm sure that this is highly controversial in the discussion, and I'm sure more is going to come out about this. But I think the thing that we have to step away from, and even if there is a little bit of the conversation regarding, the Muslims are going to build a mosque here, and you hear all these different ideas. And these are the games that the elite have been playing for a very long time, as a divide and conquer method of getting us to go at each other. Christian against Muslim, different races against each other, male against female. Anytime you see something like that, it's one of the games. And we need to step away from that game and really be open to some other method, agenda, or idea, particularly those that feel that they need to harness and control the people as cattle. And so we need to kind of look at everything, analyze it, review it, be sensible, and don't get people fired up and so that they start going after each other. Yeah, I mean, there are definitely going to be groups of people that are doing things here and there, and for various reasons. Certain, you go into the Middle East, and a lot of them feel violated. There's been plenty of wars over there, and they do. I'm sure that they have their ideas that they should retaliate and so forth. But I think if you look at the bigger picture, for the most part, it is a method to get people disempowered, obey, get rid of any type of guns and protections. Don't think on your own. Accuse your neighbor. All of these other things, and we end up spending lots and lots of times, a lot of our time getting fired up about issues. Like when Trump was in office and they had that woman march, the females all gathering together, proclaiming that men are evil. Not a single human being on this planet can exist without both male and female. And they can if it's a test tube, but I mean, let's be real. We need to get out of these ridiculous mentalities, and I don't care what people are thinking. You need to start getting out of the mind control of the game and be rational and sensible and see through that there are many different things happening around us as distractions, and we need to not focus so much on the distractions, but anytime there's a distraction, start looking deeper to see what else is really behind it. So
yeah, you're absolutely right. That's the game. And I was thinking of, it's a reality within a reality within a reality. And why do I say that? Because most of the people will see, like, for example, I was watching some of the French people reacting, and some were praying, crying, and the whole nation is gathering as one. I understand, because it's the symbolic of French history, which, by the way, I don't agree. For me, it is first a mud flood building. So for those who are into the mud flood, studies, they might say, oh, well, they have destroyed one of the other mud flood technology, like they have done in, Syria and other countries, or in Laos, when they have destroyed also, bombarded literally whole regions when, there was no reason really to do it, because they had some remains of giants type of artifacts, right? I think you talked about that in one of your report. Some other people, the Christians now in France, are saying, wow, this is fantastic now. Finally, it's a revival of the Christian church. All the Christian will be one again. Some of the Muslim over there might be celebrating right now. There are some pictures and videos about that, because, the symbolic of the Christian church, or, the Christian power in France is literally Notre Dame was burning. Now, of course, you have the news that will definitely, the main news that will continue to feed what the system, that 3D system, the 3D hologram wants you to believe in, so you can continue to believe into that game and not really, and still give your power away to the narrative they want you to believe in. And of course, which is interesting, is that if you look at some of these news, they literally all have the same narrative. No matter what news you watch, France, US, UK, same narrative within an hour after it started. But strangely, Wikipedia and some other information source, the fire barely started. They already had information about the spire of Notre Dame, that the spire collapsed.
That's correct.
It didn't collapse yet. So again, we go back into the 9/11 conspiracy thing. Now, which is interesting is that YouTube, when you type, and there's a whole videos, a lot of videos about that, YouTube have tagged Notre Dame fire with 9/11. So they made a mistake. They said, "Oh, we're sorry. I mean, it's the AI algorithm that did a mistake." Some other people say, "Well, no, that might be a message from some of these New World Order guys saying, hey, you know what? That's like 9/11. We pulled it once. We're going to pull it twice. You're not going to defeat us." So that's another information that I've seen online. And then, of course, you have like you said, that whole other, conspiracy theory beyond, if you go the 3D information from the news, you go a little bit deeper, and then what you found is all these guys talking about. You see, we've seen pictures of a Muslim guy that was on the roof an hour before. The Muslims were laughing. We have since 2 years, since Macron literally is in power, churches everywhere in France that are desacralized and degraded. Every week, last week, more than 10 churches got degraded. I'm talking about they take the Jesus off the cross, they break things, the altar. I mean, they do all kinds of things in these churches, but no one in the news in France is talking about it. It's important to certainly not talk about it. But if there are, one mosque that is eventually, or anything related to the Muslim community, automatically will make the news. And of course, ultimate, if there is 2 swastika painted on a wall, the whole French government goes in the street, even those who hate each other when they go in the parliament, right? Pure enemies to each other, suddenly they hold hands and they're all in the street crying because saying this is ultimate, this is something that we cannot allow in France. We cannot allow, the Jewish community to be victimized like that. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm completely, I'm not for one for another. I'm an outsider. I'm just looking things from outside. I'm thinking, okay, as we say in French, deux poids, deux mesures, meaning there is 2 different weights here, many different sides to the stories here. We have, on one hand, the Christian that are definitely, a lot of churches, as I said, are desacralized, but nobody talk about it. Then we also, of course, always proclaim that the Muslim community is the one that is trying to erase the Christian community and the Christian history. And then I'm thinking, wow, and there is one that's very quiet. There are 3 main religions on this planet. I mean, Buddhist and these guys, we don't really hear from them, Sikh, same thing. So I'm thinking, and this is the way my mind works, okay.
Well, there's indigenous too.
Yeah,
but they're
the
not.
indigenous, the natives.
Yeah.
But then I'm thinking, okay, out of these 3 religions, there are 2 that are obviously put against each other, right? Part of the game, of the narrative, to create a lot of emotion and have people taking sides. Emotion is great. There's a lot of louche right there. And in the same time, there's a 3rd one that is absolutely not talking. We never hear about them. And if anything happened about them, it's a worldwide revolution. And I'm thinking, okay, all this is part of a game.
But it's ultimately a Christian. The whole thing is that they're both Zoroastrian. So they're playing the good and evil thing in multiple different ways.
Right. And don't you think that the 3 religions might have some Zoroastrian roots?
They just about all the religions have this contrast of good and evil. Exactly. And you see it. It's literally, they actually got rid of a bunch of gargoyles because, and there's a certain individual that was one of the architects. And now, like I said to you earlier, Chris, keep an eye on the architects, because if they can build in this reality, they can build in other realities. And they can also be used by other dimensional beings or other species. So we have this interesting individual here that shows up in Notre Dame. And his name is, let's see if we can get him. His name is also strikingly Emmanuel. His name is, let's see, I'll read his full name. Eugene Emmanuel Violette Leduc. This guy came in, he restored the prominent medieval landmarks in France, including some of the things that were damaged from the French Revolution. And he got into a restoration project in Notre Dame Cathedral, the Basilica of Saint Denis, Mont Saint Michael, and Saint Chapelle. And the medieval walls of the city, the Carcassonne. And so so he's of the new generation of architects. And he got rid of some of those gargoyles. If you ask me, I started looking at him, and I saw the name Emmanuel, and I looked at him, and I was like, oh, there he is. So Emmanuel Macron, he has talked, he sees himself as a leader, as a ruler. He sees himself equivalent to Napoleon and all of his glory, but in fact, I see him more as an incarnation of Eugene Emmanuel Viollet-le-Duc. And wondering,
Dionysus.
Yeah, well, Dionysus then brings in the element of Napoleon, because Dionysus was clearly the fire and the superhuman ability of some of these strange leaders that are able to captivate nations and bring them to their knees. That's not a human trait, by the way. When you see someone that's able to master large groups, you better believe that there is an advanced being there supporting them and enabling them to create levels of hypnosis and, obedience, get them to give up their whole lives for causes that don't really make a lot of sense. And, it just goes on and on and on. But one of the things that was said, another thing that kind of triggered me, was the first thing that Macron said after the fire is, we can rebuild it. So immediately the architect wants to go back and rebuild the structure again.
Yeah, a few important things were said. That was definitely very important, but also what was striking me when I heard that is he said it was, of course, he came with his face of first of the class, very sad. So he was faking the emotion of sadness so much it was just ridiculous. But then he said, "Oh well, Notre Dame is burning. It's the body of and the soul of every Frenchman and woman that is burning with Notre Dame." And I'm thinking, wow, does that sound like a sacrifice here?
Here again, let's go back to the name of Emmanuel, which is also a name that has been used for Jesus in history. Billy Myers referred to him not as Jesus, but as Emmanuel. And so you have this really strange symbolism from either it's an agenda of the one world order or Christ Antichrist agenda, that I call it. And I say that not to be disrespectful toward, whatever people's belief system is, but rather that governments typically embrace a sincere belief system to harness people and get them to obey and listen and to go through, carry on and submit to something that may be somewhat very uncomfortable and horrific in some cases, like some types of destruction or subordination. And so what I'm looking at here is that they're trying to, show that there was this glowing cross that lasted throughout this fire. I know that Peter recently talked about Christ Church and how there was, the false flag event that happened there, and it was a Muslim, an attack on the Muslim church. And so there's like, just like the weird things that have happened, and it's sort of like what Peter said, that there was this, kind of portal or something that's opened up over in Christ Church, and that you have something that's trying to manipulate and use the Christian agenda to harness something. It's very likely everyone's been educated on the one world order, and it's almost to the point where Christians, I wish you'd just open up your eyes. They're using your belief system to harness different things. And I grew up Catholic. I went to Protestant church. I did Catholic Bible school. I did the whole bit. So I could see that, they can easily just take whatever was in Revelations, which, if anyone's truly honest, nobody really has a full understanding of the symbolism in Revelation. but they have crafted it in such a way that they can use it to create an agenda where everyone is unified under one rule, one order, and in order for one ruler or one system to control all the people, we know that AI has to be involved. It's just way too many people. There's way too much to manage, and if whoever that is sees people as a number, then exactly it's how it's going to be experienced. People will be seen as a number. There's no emotion attached. Like we talked earlier about Macron. Macron is interested in his role. He's interested in his narcissistic stance of who he is, and he's powerful and he's this and that. But when the people are suffering and he's seeing what's happening to his city, does he actually feel for the people? Does he really care? That's a true ruler, is someone that cares for the people. We don't know what this is. And when you have people that want to be figureheads, celebrities, I don't know, but to be that detached from the people is clearly a wave of something that we don't want, and it's heading into that direction of an agenda of something else where they're just trying to manage the people. So I don't know. I see so much in here, even just like in Wikipedia, like you said, they were very quick in updating it. And while I was looking at it today, I'm like, wow, they already have everything updated. And I don't know when that got updated, if it got updated yesterday. If anyone, you said that they looked into it yesterday, or was it today that it was updated?
Yeah, some people have looked into Wikipedia literally while the fire was starting, maybe an hour ago, and then suddenly they were talking about different facts that only happened a few hours later, but they were transcribing that like if it already happened. So it just reminded me that the 9/11, when the second tower was not even down, that some of the news were already saying that the tower number 2 is down. It was still up. So it seems that they have narratives that are pretty much ready to go. And so that means, for me personally, it seems that there is a preparation behind it. So that means it's organized, man-made. I wouldn't say man-made, but definitely there is a whole organization to lead to that point. When narrative is ready, the news anchors are ready. There is a French guy that went on the news on Fox, and he is known in France to not be afraid to say the truth. And he was talking simply about the fact that, he was very sad that it was obviously like a 9/11 for France, even if, of course, good, it was a good thing. There was no casualties, but it's a very old building that's destroyed. And he says, but what's interesting is that it happened to so many churches in the last few months, and nobody talks about that. And suddenly that building that has an inspection, that's me adding it, that building was in renovation, and every day the Paris Fire Department were sending their inspectors to the site and checking everything after the job was done at the end of the day, to make sure that everything was safe every day. And suddenly that whole roof goes on fire like that. Just, it's a mistake for one of the workers. He did something, maybe it was welding. No, this is not a regular construction or renovation. This is a very specific one. I mean, the precautions are huge. There are safety standards that are incredible in this type of structure when you work with wood.
They're usually more safe. They're usually more careful than as if it wasn't touched and just sort of left to, kind of, break down or whatever. But you're right.
And so the guy started talking like that, and directly the anchor told him, "Sir, do you have any facts? You're starting to make some assumption here. You have no facts. This is conspiracy. We don't work like this here." And it happened to 2 or 3 different channels. And it's like you're not allowed to even think and say, hey, you know what? I'm just observing that something is very strange here. You're not allowed to. You need to take the narrative the news are telling you. One fireman says, which is very strange, is that the fire was still on. The firefighter was still trying to, to extinguish the fire and pretty much solve the problem. And already all the news had that same narrative saying it is obviously something that happened with one of the crew during the renovation that have started that fire. It says, that is crazy. Why don't you just let first the firemen do their job and then wait a day or two for the inspection to come in and the investigation, and then we will have an answer. And this is why some of the people say, well, and the news anchors, you have no idea either. What are you talking about? I mean, the fire is not down yet, and you still have your narrative ready. But we cannot even think differently. We can say, hey, you know what? It's very strange, by the way. All the churches in France are under attack lately. And now
you don't only obey, Chris.
You can only
obey.
Well,
you have to listen and accept only what they tell you that you're supposed will tell you what to think.
You cannot think by yourself. Yeah. You cannot be a divine sovereign being anymore. You have to be a machine.
And so, I don't claim to know everything, but I do.
No.
I want to look at all different ideas, and if someone brought something up, you have to be willing to listen and to see what they have to say. Don't shut people down.
No.
Let them speak and have an idea. But when they tell us we need to, follow this narrative, it's like the pre-written script. Oh, sorry, but I didn't get my script yet. And in my script it doesn't say that, and that's what they expect. And then, there's something wrong with you because you're not reading from the script. I saw a commercial like that once, and everyone had their own script and sitting at the dinner table looking at each other like, oh yeah, you didn't say your line correctly. And life is a stage, right? That's their perspective. For us, it's not. We want to think outside of the box. We want to see something else, and we want to express our own experience, and not to be dogmatic about any of it, but rather be willing and be free enough to say what our perspective and view is on the matter. So, and as we're looking at this, here's another significant point. This was a place where there's a coronation of Napoleon and many other rulers from the French rulers and from even other countries. It's a political, it's religious, it's a central point for the Parisians, the people of France, but it even goes back, and originally this place was called before the period of Christianity in France. This is all Wikipedia. The Gallo-Roman temple dedicated to Jupiter stood in the site of Notre Dame. Evidence of this is in the Pillar of the Boatmen. There's actually a pillar there, and that was a Roman column erected in Lutetia in honor of Jupiter by the Guild of Boatmen in the 1st century AD, the oldest monument in Paris. It is one of the earliest pieces of the representational Gallo-Roman art to carry a written inscription. We have a dedication to Jupiter. Now we know that Dionysus was posing as Jupiter. Dionysus brought over a lot of that, was involved with a lot of what was going on in that portal of Versailles that I talked about, and kind of created a groundwork. So what are we really looking at? We see this Roman Catholic cathedral, amazing architectural work of art, but originally it was a Roman a temple for Jupiter. And so there's a lot of layers of stuff here. And as you start looking down, another thing that was absolutely amazing, and here's like we have the duality inside the Notre Dame, but there was also a point where they had something related to the let's see if I can find it here. The contrary belief of religions, more like alchemy and so forth, and anti-religion. It was also reflected in there. It was really quite a mix of information that as you're walking around, it was called the cult. The cathedral was rededicated to the cult of reason, or the cult of the Supreme Being. And the Supreme Being was a form of deism established in France by Maximilien Robespierre during the French Revolution. It was intended to become the state religion of the new French Republic and a replacement for Roman Catholicism and its rival, the cult of reason. So in the cult of reason, this is all on Wikipedia, by the way, so if anyone wants to look up any of this information, but it's quite fascinating. The cult of reason was France's first established state-sponsored atheistic religion, intended as a replacement for Roman Catholicism. So, and during the French Revolution, it has also rivaled Robespierre's cult of the Supreme Being. and then on top of that, what we have, the Goddess of Liberty, which is essentially the Statue of Liberty, the personification, the goddess of the concept of liberty and Statue of Liberty, or the Goddess Libertas by Marianne, the national symbol of France. There's so much here. I mean, you could just browse through here, and it's kind of like, what in the world was going on in this one place? And we know that the Masonic stuff had to be involved. I mean, it just was kind of a requirement almost in some of these early buildings.
Right. No, absolutely. And I'm done. And someone's knocking on the door. I'm so sorry for that. For me, which is interesting, is that all this history, and I was just while you were talking, Jess, it was just my brain was just like firing up. All that history about Notre Dame, of course, we know that in the past they have built all these churches on temples or places of worship of what they call the pagans, right? That's what all the churches in Europe were built. Now that Jupiter was a monument for Jupiter in Lutetia, which was the Roman name for Paris, on that same island, I think it's fascinating. And to know that Napoleon was coronated emperor at that same place, I mean, accident? I don't know, maybe. And then that now Macron becomes a hero that's going to rebuild the cathedral. And of course, Burns on the Day needs to finally bring the solution that he doesn't have to calm down the yellow vest. I mean, all that is... There's a point, I think, some people might say, Chris, I mean, you're very into conspiracy here. You see things in connection that, don't, there's no connection here. I mean, after what we saw, these last year, Jess, and all the things we discover, I mean, it's hard to not sometimes laugh nervously about all this. It's so
shocking.
Obvious. It's shocking.
Now, didn't Macron also refer to himself as Jupiter?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Not only refer to himself, but the news and everybody called him Jupiter.
So I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, it's clearly it's the basis. What does this mean then? If a structure that was originally the place for Jupiter worship, or I would say Dionysus in this case, what would be what does this say? That if the building is burnt down, like I said, there is more involved here than 3D. There's much more involved.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, and of course, I mean, I'm still wondering what is that thing about the all these artifacts that supposedly have been saved, and that picture they show everywhere in the world of Notre Dame inside after the fire, and the only picture you see is the cross that's shining like I mean, the thing, it was hundreds and hundreds, I don't know, maybe thousands of degrees in there. Everything was like black because of the fire, but the cross was shining gold and with a ray of light going on it. I mean, that picture, you cannot invent it either.
No.
That was hysterical when I saw that.
Yeah.
And every news chat and every news channels are using that picture.
Well, it works on the emotions of Christians, and
exactly.
You know, their faith, their belief is based on is symbols. I mean, we look at symbols. For humanity, symbols have always been a guidepost to something. And so when you see something like that, or, a visitation of some sort, and Roman Catholics in particular are very, very much, guided to observe and look for we call it it's literally the paranormal. And so they're guided to look at these things as a signpost, kind of like when you're traveling through the woods and it's a direction. Psychologically, it creates something in your mind of an expectation of a new direction, which then is constructed and communicated in a multi-dimensional way, and the people or the flock seem to know when to follow it, whatever it is. I mean, there's different belief systems do it in a very, very similar way, and it creates a juncture in time and point. And that's why, like I said, the stuff that happened in Christchurch, why of all, things happening in New Zealand, but it's interesting enough, it's called Christchurch. They had these earthquakes, I think it was in 2013, I might be wrong, in the year when some of those things happened, but, and then, the other thing that just happened recently. So you have people looking, expecting, and then looking for the next symbolic event of something else coming up, waiting,
and
for
it's interesting
an end time scenario of some sort.
I'm interrupting. I'm so sorry. Just before I forget, in the news yesterday, everyone were talking in France and on some news channels in the US that people believed it was a sign. Right. The fact that the church, that the cathedral burned on the Saint week, few days before, I think it's Easter in a few days, right? Isn't it the resurrection of
That's correct.
Of Christ? Mm-hmm. Interesting. And it's like a new beginning. Something burned, the old is burning, the new is coming. The new what? That is an interesting question.
But in reality, the Easter originally comes from Ishtar. That's where the word comes from. Oester, Ishtar, and it has nothing to do with Christianity. But, then they converted that into, a resurrection, and Passover is also Judaism. And when, regarding the slavery that they had to endure over in Egypt. So you have a lot of different things happening, but yes, it has to be symbolic, and they do try to make it on the certain dates, but the dates are not really legitimate. That's how you start looking and say, well, I mean, we wouldn't really know what the legitimate dates are because we've been trained to think that certain things happen at certain times which are not aligned historically. So, which, like I said, returns us back to square one of what is the agenda, and what are they trying to portray? This is the division between the Middle East and the Western world, the division between the Christians and the Muslim, the divisions between this group and that group, and then the expectation of an apocalyptic or a war event and loss. It's an expectation of great things, but loss. We get to see signs and symbols, but we're going to lose everything. I don't buy into that, and I really want people to get out of that paradigm, because it is a paradigm. It is a way of thinking, and it is a way of the restructuring. I don't want to beat the dead horse on this one. But anyhow, I think that people it couldn't be said enough in some ways, because we want people to really start looking for it, start looking for the different patterns and different things that they're trying to set up.
And the symbolic, you need to understand that those sorry, not you, but it's a figure of speech, to understand that these guys love symbolic. They live by symbolic. Most of the time, called Illuminati, Freemasons, whatever you might call them.
Yes.
They love symbolic. They never do anything randomly. Everything has a meaning. Time, date, location. I mean, everything has a meaning. So it's very interesting to go and start looking with a different pair of eyes, I would say, and start looking without, like you said, I have no answer. I'm just asking questions.
Right.
Observing things and say, okay, where did that lead? What is behind it? Because you cannot satisfy yourself with one type of answer. There is always a layer. I call it the lasagna. It's like always a layer behind a layer behind a layer. And there are many layers before you can go to the truth. So for me, it's absolutely fascinating. And there was one guy that was saying, and it would be very surprising if they come tomorrow and say, we have found a yellow vest in the church.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's going to work. I think it's just going to look very
No.
contrived. And, they need to really take another look at this.
I mean, yeah, they're not going to do the passport trick that they did with the 9/11, right?
Yeah.
And my friends, they won't do that. This one, I don't think they will. But you know why? In some way, there is something. A part of me was like, well, I was upset when I heard that the history of France, and maybe I repeat myself. I'm sorry, but it really bothers me. When I heard that the history of France, the heart of France, is burning, I'm like, that's not the heart of France.
No. The heart of the
That
Francis people, right?
This is a symbolic of the Christian agenda that we know is definitely not human. Maximus Rufus bullshit that's imposed on the French people, so they have disconnected from their real roots and their divine sovereignty of the land and divine sovereignty of the people and their soul, connection to eternal God source. And that is what pissed me off. If that thing is burning in some way, part of me is like, well, if it can help French people to regain their sovereignty and reconnect to the divine source, maybe that might be a good thing. But, people might say I'm mean to say that. But This is all the history, and all the artifacts are just symbolic of religious oppression on people. That's it. I'm sorry. If it's Christian, Muslim, Jewish, I don't make any. For me, it's potato. Same thing.
Right.
I'm sorry. I just, I need to say it.
And I think that we can look at this and say, I see the architect, and I think about what Peter was saying about inception, and how that the builder, the architect, is making a different plan. When they choose like a fascinating structure like this and then take it down, it makes me think that they're ready to rebuild something else.
Exactly.
That the architect is coming forward and is ready to change the system. Now, if you look throughout history, the time of Egypt, when Akhenaten came in, it was time to rebuild, to get rid of all the old gods and start defacing all of the old structures, where destroying actually the images of some of the pantheon of ancient Egypt. And you see this when the Muslim groups would come through, and they would see the Buddhists, and you see a lot of those amazing sculptures of Buddha, being destroyed, in certain parts of Asia, or even communism taking down some of these structures. And so anytime that the architect's ready to rewrite the story, they start to disassemble first. And so you see that even in the inception here, there's a disassembly of the old ideas, the old style, and that's the mud flood. Getting rid of that old style, introducing the new structure. There's everything that we have is based on a matrix, a structure, a construct, and it's part of the builder. Now, it's not an accident. The Masonic Lodge being so powerful, and everything is regarding the builder tools, because they know it is the construct that creates everything else around it. And more than once, it's like the child, building up their Legos and then tearing it down and then rebuilding again. And we've done this over and over and over again, and you see it throughout history. So when you see that this, to me, this is a statement. This is a statement from the architect.
It is, and I was wondering, because I know they really want to go to, erase all these religions and unify them as one religion. And this is why they're literally, they're very close to rebuild that third temple in Jerusalem, which is supposedly the sign of the unification of all the religions, and then the king will come, not God, not Jesus, a king. Human man that all the world will follow. Remember, we talked about that with Esther and that woman that will also,
That was that preacher who prophesied.
Yep.
Christian preacher who prophesied there'd be a woman that was going to come in whose name was Esther. What did I say? This is Esther. This is the whole. It's, it's all pretty much. Let's follow the yellow brick road here. It's pretty crazy.
It is.
There's another thing too that I think is quite interesting, and because you're bringing up some little, not little bit, big points. Is there's a seat here that they talk about. Let's see if I can find it. There was a specific seat. Chris, why don't you tell us about the a little bit more about the temple while I look for this point.
Okay. I was doing some research, and it has nothing to do with, I'm against one religion or another. I'm just, looking for truth and information. And I always heard about that third temple. And when I started looking into it, I realized that was one of the plans of those in power. That can be Christian, Muslim, or Jewish, it doesn't matter, they can hide behind any religions. But the real goal is literally to destroy, as I was saying, all the old religions and build the new one, which will be the one religion, one heart, one people, right? One spirit, pretty much hive mind. And that is connected to the third temple. There is this prophecy in Israel that the third temple, there was a few signs that need to happen, and those signs happened, and that would be the sign that the third temple will be rebuilt. And when the third temple is rebuilt, then eventually, that king would come, and not the return of Jesus, but a king that will rule over the world. And so there was different things said about who that person may be, but this is not the most important thing here. We are at the point where a lot of things are happening where, the U.S. just recognized the Golan Heights as from, Israeli, and all this is part of a whole agenda. It would take pretty much 3 hours to explain the whole thing here, but to go short, France is known as the New Jerusalem. Not a lot of people know that. And France being the New Jerusalem, meaning by that, we have the whole French government is absolutely controlled by Zionists. Let's face it. It's what it is. For example, the Minister of Defense, which is Christophe Castaner, which is the guy that right now is supposed in charge of all the police. Well, his deputy is someone that is a secretary of defense, Nunez. This guy is definitely with his hands really deep into the cookie jar when it comes to that whole, Zionist new prophecy, where pretty much Europe needs to be pretty much destroyed. All the values of Europe, all the sovereignty of each countries, the culture, the family unit, all that needs to be destroyed literally, so that they can bring that new world, that new religion, that one religion, one heart, one mind, and one religion and one government. And that would be the next phase. So my question was, since there is so much happening in France, France seems to be the heart of so many different things. And now we see here at the cathedral that was before, of course, Jupiter, knowing that Macron is deeply, he worked for the Rothschild for a long time before he became minister for maybe 1 year and directly president out of nowhere. All that is not an accident. We know who is, he has to be pretty much very nice to those who put him in power. So all this, for me, there is no mystery. Now, there is something else. We talked about the yellow vest going in the protest and protesting in the street for the last 5 months, 22 weeks. Wow. Without stopping, in the rain, in the cold, with the gas, the LBD, which is the flashbulb, losing eyes.
That's right. Yeah.
It doesn't matter. They go in the street more. They don't stop. The news, of course, say that there are 22,000, 30,000 in the whole France. That would be one per town. That's pretty much what it is if you follow the numbers of the news. One per town. One in Paris, one in Nantes, one in Nice. So that's impossible, right? There are way more than that, but they're afraid to give the number. They never stop. Now spring is coming. This is why Macron is very afraid that if he gives an answer that's not correct, it's going to bring a revolution that he will never be able to stop. This is why Notre Dame is very convenient, right? But the second thing is, because Notre Dame here burned, that he said, I'm going to rebuild it. And I'm going to ask people in France and other countries for donations. Guess what? His two best friends, the number one richest man in France, number 4 in the world, Bernard Arnault, suddenly decided this morning, like a few hours after that happened, to give $200 million or euro, same thing. And another one of these billionaires in France, decided to give another 100 million. And what is fascinating for me is that, one, these guys are not able to give money when the yellow vests are asking for food, bread, dignity, be able to feed their kids and have a decent life, to be able to live decently by their work. They don't want more. They just want to have, what others have, right? Dignity. The ones that are behind Macron are, of course, all these billionaires, because once he was in power, the first thing he did was to tax all the poor and all the middle class, take all the money and give it to the richest of the richest. So they make billions of dollars. And now, of course, they are giving $200 million, another one, 100 million, which is, of course, a donation, non-profit organization. Therefore, they won't pay tax on that. And they look like their best, they're helping the country. So what's fascinating for me is how much money can be given for a building that, as I said, is symbolic of something I do not agree with, when people, lives, beings, are right now struggling and in desperation and literally in the street, ready to face, literally to lose an eye or a leg or a hand, it doesn't matter, just because they want to live a decent life. They said, we're not angry at the people that are rich. They work hard, they're rich, so be it. All we ask is fairness.
Right.
But nobody.
It's the mockery. It's a mockery.
A joke.
It's saying we have a higher regard for material things, for a building that symbolizes and justifies our own glory. And here again, it's, the narcissism looking within the mirror of themselves only, never reflecting upon humanity and the very people who are the backbone, the core, and the lifeblood of the region. And so, here we have it, the disproportionate system of mechanics, of a lack of human expression, and this transhumanistic view of everything, soulless, without conscience. And so and I'm not saying that Macron's the only one. I mean, it is across the board. We've seen this less desensitization, and is it just heartless, or are so many of our leaders being pulled into these systems? Maybe some of them even start off with a conscience, wanting to help the people. They get hijacked and controlled by these upper level entities who, reframe their thinking, desensitize them. You can literally see mind control in their eyes. I mean, there's that faraway stare. They all have it. They seem to be like a machine. They're the machine men that were talked about before by Charlie Chaplin and others. And they've lost control. As soon as you get to that level, you are no longer your own, and you are, reiterating everything that you're supposed to say. And so there's this disheartening emotion. And so, Americans are like, wow, there's a lot of things have changed. We don't understand what's going on. There's a lot of confusion in the U.S. But in France, they're like, really feeling, you see them. It's like children cast out into the street, sent out to fare for themselves. And you can see the look in their eyes, like, wow, we just feel unloved. We feel like, we're told to leave the land that our ancestors built, and or to be replaced by others, like, we're just like a bunch of numbers. And what happened here? It's a huge level of confusion. So,
and there is, sorry, Jess, there's something that just hit me. Do you know why that cathedral burned also? I just got it.
Okay.
This next week and the week after will be the two most powerful protests ever. It's the 23rd, it's the national gathering of everyone, school, union, everyone will be in Paris next week, like in 3 days. And the week after is the 1st of May. So he's not stupid, Macron. He knows that his answer to the grand debate, and supposedly that he will bring answer to he has no answer. He knows it. If he dares to put on the table his offer, it's going to be a revolution. He knows it. The French people are waiting for that. So now with that event, it's going to be very hard for Yellow Vests to go and protest in the street. Why? Because they're going to be seen as they're heartless. They don't care about the nation. They don't care about the heart of Paris that was destroyed, the heart of France, and da-da-dee-da-da. They're like heartless people. So they are put in a very strange situation now. And I wouldn't be surprised that is not by accident.
Right. And you brought up something else to me too. There was an interesting thing on YouTube that people were reflecting on, and it's called Pet Goat 2, and how it's a Canadian animated short film writer, directed, produced, and edited by Louis Lefebvre. And it's a film features commentary on American society, politics, and particularly the agendas of Presidents George W. Bush, Barack Obama. This is all on Wikipedia. I'm reading. Biblical theology, Egyptian imagery, is post-apocalyptic setting. The titles reference Pet Goat. The Pet Goat, erroneously referred to My Pet Goat, a book, children's book of Emma Booker's school in Sarasota, Florida, read to the President Bush at the time of the 9/11 attacks, which is
interesting, right?
We're familiar in Sarasota, of all things, and the cryptic symbolism and conspiracy. So what they did, why don't you tell them we'll probably attach the video. It's a great one because it pretty much predicts what's going to happen here.
It is. I mean, yesterday I was looking for the symbolic, 15, what is behind that date, and I was looking different things, and suddenly out of nowhere, I don't know, I tapped something randomly, and boom, I had that video, and I saw that picture of the spire burning on the right hand of the video, and on the left hand I saw something similar, the part of an animation thing called I, pet goat, 2. And I thought, okay, let's see what it is. I didn't watch the whole thing. I just watched a video when the guy explained the symbolic behind it through the eyes of, I guess, that Louis Lefebvre, which was deep into the Illuminati, the symbolism between the Egyptian and mixed with Jesus. I mean, it's a whole thing. It's all connected to the destruction of the old and the renewal. Right, something new is supposed to come. It's all connected to that, and at the very end, it shows Notre Dame like a cathedral, and you see the spires falling down.
Yeah,
and I'm thinking
exactly the same way. It falls down exactly the same way. Yeah.
As well as you saw the two towers of World Trade Center and all that, and I'm thinking at that point, okay, this cannot be an accident. I mean, this is definitely clearly the blueprint is really there since 2012.
2012, yeah, he had this. He created this,
yep.
And you said that he worked on what was some of the other
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings,
and another movie I cannot remember that was also weird.
But there's not a whole lot written about him either. You said.
No, I went on Wikipedia and you see. Or the Louis Lefebvre of the 1900s, 1800s, but nothing about him.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you type producer, you automatically see the movies, but you don't see anything about him, unless I didn't look properly.
Right. So I thought that was quite interesting, and the point that I was going to bring up earlier too is I'm going to go back to the Wikipedia page again. That. I think I just lost it. No, there it is. It's called, let's see, Notre Dame contains the cathedra. All right, the cathedra is the bishop's throne, is the seat of a bishop. It is a symbol of the bishop's teaching authority in the Catholic Church, the Orthodox Church, and the Anglican Communion churches. Cathedra is the Latin word for chair with armrests, and it appears in early Christian literature. I could not help but think about the Rennes-le-Château and the Devil's Armchair.
I know, I just thought the same, yeah.
I mean, come on. What is it? There's something in France, and that and I keep on saying this whole Asmodeus thing where, it's like the two faces of this Asmodeus being the devil and being the savior at the same time. Creating, there's two chairs here. There's the chair in in Notre Dame. There's the chair and
the devil's armchair. Yeah.
Yeah, the devil's armchair, and it's just like, well. And also there's some kind of Egyptian symbolism that's in the devil's armchair too, which is quite interesting. Nothing is done without symbology.
No, there is one minister, a guy from the parliament, that supposedly is supporting the Yellow Vest, but we know he's part of the lodge, the Masonic Lodge of the Grand Orient in France. And yesterday it said something, and it struck me, and I cannot say why exactly, but it says, you need to understand that I'm very sad because it's the knowledge, the science of the West, of the Orient, and he's part of the Grand Orient Lodge, the Orient that came to the East, to France, and what is burning is literally that knowledge. By Orient, he really meant first, I guess, his lodges, his knowledge, and all the philosophy they are teaching over there, which is deeply embedded with Egyptian teachings, right? And philosophy, they're really into the Egyptian one. And
mystery schools.
Mystery schools, sorry, yeah, I couldn't find a word. And then you have on that video, the one, the eye, Petgo 2, you have also, they talk about the Eye of Horus, and I mean, so many different things that are connecting to Egypt as well. It's very strange. For me, it's one of the, we say glauque in French, it's like a very weird, creepy type of video. I mean, I didn't want to watch the whole video. I would rather watch the 20 minutes, the 29 minutes explanation of the video that the guy was, that I sent you. It's even, and that's something that I guess you I don't know if you have seen the video. They talk about a lily in there. A girl called Lily. I mean, there's so many different things.
Yeah, getting back to that whole Lilith, and it's biblical stuff. There's also supposed to be a pool in France too, and I'm not sure what region it was. That's supposed to have, like, it looks like the way the trees are all around it, and there's a reflection of the water. It makes it look like it is an eye, an all-seeing eye, or a reptilian-looking eye, green eye. And so, there's a lot of, like, really unusual things happening over here, and I'm not really sure why this area in particular. I mean, whether it has to do with the whole legend of, I want to say legend or fact or history or whatever you want to call it, that's your perspective of what happened with the whole Mary Magdalene story going through there. And that is another thing where, the corporations, Monarch, and everyone loves playing with that, because there has to be at least 200 women, at least, that believe they're in the incarnation of Mary Magdalene. And we know that that indicates a program. So, and a masking of whatever they're trying to do. And of course, there's multiple people claiming to be Jesus too. So it's a very, very curious time. And it's, we're trying to sort through exactly what they're trying to do. I think it's the best thing to do is just sit back and watch and try to pick up all the little details in the landmarks and see what they're trying to portray, but don't follow it. That's the best thing I can think, but they're like, if you start really picking apart, it all pretty much starts going back to the same thing one way or another. It comes forth. And a last piece here is there is these bells. There was a whole bunch of bells that were there. And I'm not saying necessarily like the Nazi bell, but there's just significant amount of bells here. I mean, it could be, just because of grandeur, but there's that, and there's this, the whole story related, probably one of the most familiar stories related to Notre Dame is the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And you see this one individual who, is the one that rings the bell all the time, kind of letting people know this is, your time's up, or there's something else going on. It's kind of an eerie sort of feeling. This is what I'm saying is this dark and light and reflection of good and evil is constantly being played out, around this area. We have, I remember watching the movie Xerxes, and there was an interesting hunchback in the story who pretty much plays both sides. The archetype of someone that would play, the side of the Greeks and then the side of the Persians. And it's just filled with stuff, filled with a lot of little pieces of history. There's a Jacques Germain here. Not sure. He was also an architect. Found that interesting. Is it possible that there's another Saint Germain appeared in this one as well? I wouldn't be surprised. We have the Merovingians, who are also part of the Matrix story, right? The movie The Matrix.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And what's their role in this, right? The Merovingian art is the art of the dynasties. So there was someone by the name of the 1st or the 4th century Basilica of Saint Etienne, then the Merovingian renovation of that church, which was in turn remodeled in 857 under the Carolingians into a cathedral. So these are the Frankish groups Yep. And what I'm looking at this too, and I'm saying, wow, look at the Frankish noble family founded by Charles Martel, and then he talks about the Pippanid clans. Now, I don't know, for those of you that listen to the Andronicus transmissions, I talked about Pip. And Pip was a story in Dickens' story of the Great Expectations. And we also talk about the Scarlet Pimpernel. So I don't know if this is all, and that had to do with the Revolution as well, didn't it?
Right.
I mean,
France.
I could just be, digging into stuff that it's not related, but maybe it is. So I'm just bringing it up. Layers and layers and layers of stuff here. The architect builds with a structure, with a base, foundations, and has to understand the laws of gravity, how things have to come together. But there's also layers of our history, agendas, and everything interwoven, very much like those Celtic weaves. There's entanglements and all sorts of things happening at once. Step back and away from it. Don't get caught up in that tunnel vision or a close vision of one portion of it, and try to see a bigger picture and look at the patterns of things. And that will help you to better make your decisions, understanding, and also how to support what is the right agenda, or what is the right thing for you. I won't even use the word agenda, but what is the right thing for humanity? What is the highest intention for humanity in all of this? And here again, that there are false flags, and there are events that are set up rather than just let's identify one person that did all of this. I don't know. I don't know if that's the issue. I think the issue is just don't play the game. Don't step into the game, and be more aware, be more awake, keep your eyes open. And it might be a very exciting time for all of us.
Well, it's like, don't be the actor in the movie, but be more the one that observe and be the viewer, observe what's going on without acting in it.
Right. I think everyone should get involved. I think every single person has something to share. And I think that if people will get away from what that they've been taught, so heavily, and like I said, that some people, they use their belief as a weapon. They throw out scripture, like as an argument and force. And if that you truly believe in your belief system, the belief system should have elements of love and not. It should have some benevolence to it. It's not supposed to be weaponized, and that's the whole thing. We've also been taught that religions are used as a way or role for warfare, and I don't know. I mean, maybe protection. It should have been always for protection, but not necessarily for going after and taking over nations and killing innocent people and forcing them to convert to any belief system. So there's still some of that element there. People need to realize what they're doing. I think they're going to be, there's levels of accountability and really even tearing down your own conscience and tearing down your own how can I say it? You're not allowing yourself to awaken. You're still in a system, because if the belief of love is, and I'm not saying turn the other cheek and all that other stuff, but I'm just saying you shouldn't be weaponizing your belief system any more than the Muslims shouldn't be saying that they have a right to go ahead and bomb innocent people, over a belief system. None of that stuff really makes any sense. It's counter to any type of purpose of a religion in the first place. So I don't even understand the whole thing. And the same thing with ancient Judaism, where they used it for warfare. We have a right, we're chosen, so we have a right to take over a nation. I don't know. I mean, I don't know where this comes from. It sounds like a construct and an agenda of some other beings that want to see perpetual pain, sorrow, and heartache for humanity. You know, that's what it looks like to me. So, anyhow, what do you think, Chris?
That was a lot of information, right?
Yeah, they got everyone's got an earful.
And you know what is interesting? I just thought about it, and it's the topic here. But Notre Dame of Paris in history, for 800 years, pretty much. Well, especially in the Middle Age, if anyone was, I guess, Christian, had to be Christian, otherwise they wouldn't accept you. But anyone that was persecuted? No. Persecuted, yes. Persecuted could ask asylum and knock on the door, and then it would be protected in the church. That was the only place in whole France where that can happen. So even the king, the army, nobody could go in there and supposedly, arrest you. And I guess from there they had tutorials and they could, get out and be back in Paris and disappear. And so that place was supposedly a very, very high protected place. I always wonder why. What was the symbolic behind it? Even the king couldn't go in there.
Because the powers behind the Roman Catholic Church were the architects. Had to have been.
Interesting, though. Interesting. So now this is burning down. No more protection.
You're carrying over ancient Rome, and ancient Rome had some incredible energies, beings, entities that supported I don't know how many years of warfare, constant warfare, control, and systems, and roads, and many ways to harness people, and I can say what I want about the Romans. I have Roman ancestry, so.
And there's something else that's important, is that the church, the Cathedral of Notre Dame de Paris, is the very core center of France. Even if it's not the center of France, it's the place where all the distance are measured from Paris, from that cathedral, all the way to every cities in France, to anywhere in France. So if you see Paris 250 miles, well, it's 250 miles from where you are to the cathedral. By removing that centerpiece, right? Symbolically, it's pretty much is the whole thing that united all the roads, all the villages, pretty much the heart. This is what they call it, the heart of France. But it's holding symbolically, energetically, everything together. That's
the grid work. That's the matrix. That's the architecture. See?
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's the Masonic. The Masons understood that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So by removing that, suddenly I guess they're ready to replace it with something else.
Yeah.
They will not replace physically the cathedral. The cathedral, the stone is still there, and everything's going to be all right. At least as of today, they're just going to rebuild the roof. But it's almost like something in there was taken away. I have a feeling energetically something happened to create something new.
Yeah. Well, things always, shift. And like I say, with one architect being affected or pulled out can significantly affect the others, and other might be stepping in power, which brings up that whole other the Tour de Defense, that other part of Paris where they're building all those new futuristic structures.
Yeah, La Défense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And what we saw over there, we saw ETs over there very powerfully awaiting the New World Order. So there it is. Yeah, people should take a look at that. Just the way I tell people to look at the Georgia Guidestones about what the intention is. If you want to look at the new city, go to the, how do you say it again? The Tour?
Tour de la Défense.
Yeah.
Tour de la Défense. La Défense, la Défense. I don't know.
So the Tour of Defense. That's right.
Yeah, the Tour of Defense.
Yeah,
it's
not,
another reality out there.
It's another strange reality. When I went there, I said the energy is completely different of any place that I've traveled to. Completely different. And that's supposed to be our future reality. That's where they want to place us. And I don't think it's a good future. So we need to shift out of that. And it looks pretty cool. I mean, people say these black buildings and some very, unique architecture here again, but it's a new architecture. It's different. And so, as I said, to keep looking at that kind of stuff and examine and see what's going on. You can see remnants of that in other places of the world where they're trying to build in like new cities, like in China and, all those empty cities that they've created. That these are their plans. This is for that new order.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of information to digest for the listener, I guess.
Yeah. Well, a lot more than the yellow vest, but not really. So, I mean, I think it's all interconnected, and
yeah.
And so these people, they set an example for humanity to not keep your eyes closed, stand up for what you believe in, use your voice now before you lose your voice. And with that said, I think we can probably close this conversation.
Yes.
Thank
you so much. Thank you so much, Jess. It was very nice to be able to talk to you today and to share that subject with the listener.
Thank you, Chris. And it's always a pleasure, and I appreciate all your insight and information, research. So, and thank you to all of you for listening in. Thank you for your comments. Let's continue on, and have a great day.
You have been listening to Andronetalks Radio. Join us on YouTube channel Jessica Ariel Morocco and visit her website at www.readingsbyariel.com.